Let's learn about the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines with my WCAG 2.1 AA video checklist. And at the bottom of my slides is accessible.org. Before we start, a few notes. If you would like to learn more about the background of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, what the different versions and conformance levels mean, as well as how WCAG relates to compliance with the law, I have another video on that I will link to in the description. Today, we will quickly cover all 50 WCAG 2.1 AA success criteria. So this is a checklist, and what we will do is we will have a summary for each success criterion, but just know that there are more details, layers, and exceptions involved. If you would like to fully explore the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines and learn them in depth and detail, I offer the WCAG course. It has video and text explanations, and it spans WCAG 2.0 AA, 2.1, and 2.2 AA. There are code examples. There are also resources inside the course that include workflows for web designers, web developers, and content editors. There's also an Excel spreadsheet checklist with a comprehensive workbook of all of the WCAG success criteria that are included from 2.0 to 2.2. And then there are also each version separated out by workbook. So it's a really comprehensive Excel spreadsheet. All right, now let's continue on with the success criteria, starting with WCAG 2.0 AA. There are 38 success criteria, and this will be a checklist for 2.1, but 2.1 simply builds on top of 2.0. So let's divide them by the different versions. Starting with 2.0, we will go through these 38 success criteria, and then we will continue on with 2.1, and we will add the additional 12 success criteria that are in 2.1 for a total of 50. So let's go ahead and get started with 1.1.1, which is text alternatives for non-text content. Here we are concerned with non-text content, which is typically going to be images. And images can be all sorts of things. So images might be a painting, it might be a photo, it might be a graphic, it might be a map. And this list can go on and on. But for any images, for any non-text content, just make sure that if there is important meaning, so if the image has important meaning, that or there is information that the image is conveying, that we make sure that there is a text alternative available. All right, with 1.2.1, we are concerned with alternatives for video and audio. So again, this is non-text content, but we're separating it out and being more specific. For video and audio, here are the alternatives that we need to provide. We need to make sure that all video only and audio only content has a text transcript, or if it's video, that it has an audio description. And just make sure that text transcripts are clearly labeled and they are available near the media. And that's because we want to make sure that they are easy to locate and it's easy to find this alternative. With 1.2.2, the requirement is that we have accurate closed captions for all recorded videos with sound. And with 1.2.3, we are back to audio descriptions. And here the requirement is that for any video where meaningful information is not available audibly, we add a text transcript or an audio description to describe that information. So with audio descriptions, think about where we have a narration in the gaps of audio or in the gaps of dialogue in a video. And sometimes with an audio description, this can be included in the video, and other times you will have an alternative video with an audio description. Again, just make sure it is easy to know that the alternative with the description is available. Now, not all videos need to have an audio description, just videos where there is meaningful information that is not available audibly. So keep that in mind. But if there are visuals that are conveying information, important information, then we need to make sure that those are brought forward. And in this success criterion, we can do so with an audio description or with a text transcript. But hold that thought, because we will get to more on audio descriptions in after just this next success criterion. But the next success criterion, 1.2.4, requires live captions, and these are for formal presentations, for formal broadcasts. So we're not going to be concerned with live captions if we have an informal video. It's an informal live video. So if we're just having a regular Zoom call with a coworker, that's not going to be the case where we need a live caption, but we do need live captions for more formal presentations. All right, so with 1.2.5, we are back to audio descriptions. Here it is a requirement. We no longer have the option. We need to make sure there's an audio description under 1.2.5. With 1.3.1, we are getting into coding. We are getting into the requirement. The title here is info and relationships. So the key here is to provide semantic meaning within the code. And we want to make sure that we structure our content so that the meaning that is conveyed visually and audibly is available programmatically. Now, this is usually not going to apply to audible information because we typically don't have too many audible indicators, but every now and then they come up. So just think there might be a chime to mark the completion of let's say a lesson. If that's the case, then we want to make sure that that information, the completion of the lesson had taken place. We want to make sure that that information was available programmatically. So having the chime by itself would be fine, but we'd also want to make sure that it is relayed programmatically. Same with the visuals. So with the visuals, just imagine, let's think of we have an article and the title of the article is in big bold letters, and let's say it's size 50 font and bold. Well, just that alone is only a visual indicator that we have the heading or we have the title of an article. We want to make sure that that meaning is preserved programmatically so that screen reader users know this is a heading 1. And it conveys that this is the main topic of this page. So we want to have that code in there with the H1s. So the H1s coded in to provide that semantic meaning. So again, with info and relationships, we are concerned with conveying the meaning that is available, presented visually and audibly on our website. With 1.3.2, the title here is meaningful order. So the requirement is that you present content in an order and sequence that makes sense and preserves meaning. This is a more general success criterion. And here we want to make sure that we are making sure that really our programmatic order matches our visual order, because the visual order usually flows logically, but we also want to make sure that the order of our content programmatically flows well and is intuitive and logical. It doesn't have to be an exact match, but it does need to be in an order that preserves meaning. So if we are skipping around content, it doesn't matter whether it's visual or programmatic, but usually the case is programmatic. We want to make sure that it doesn't skip around. So the order of the content usually matters. There's usually a flow and a reason for that flow. So we want to make sure that the meaning of our content is preserved. With 1.3.3, we are concerned with sensory characteristics. The requirement here is that when providing detailed instructions, they aren't reliant upon a single sensory ability. So just think when you have instructions, and again, this is a more general requirement, but this just requires that you take a step back and then think about, okay, what are the instructions on my website, and are they at any point reliant upon a singular sensory ability? So let's just say that your instruction is to click a button on the top right hand side of the website. Well, someone may not be able to perceive where that button is, and in that case, that would not meet this success criterion, because we want to make sure that we're not reliant upon a single sensory ability. So just the mere fact that you provide that instruction is okay, but then you need to add something to it so it isn't only reliant on that ability to locate that button. So we want to locate the button in the visual position. So the things you need to take into consideration are shape, color, size, visual position, orientation, and sound. So again, we get back to sound. Think of the instruction being like, wait for the chime to move to the next lesson. In that case, we have another instruction that's reliant upon a singular sensory ability. The idea here is not to restrict your ability to have these different instructions, but just to combine it with another sensory ability. With 1.4.1, the title is use of color, and the key is not to rely on color alone to convey information. So this is getting more specific. With 1.3.3, we were more general, and with 1.4.1, this is more specific. And the thinking here is that if someone is colorblind, we want to make sure that they still have the information that is necessary. So we're not just relying upon color. It is okay to include color to convey information, but we don't only rely upon color. So just think of a toggle. And when I think about a toggle, I'm thinking of an iPhone and how the on and off is indicated by color. So at least in the past, it was, if the toggle was on, it was bright green, and if it was off, it was grayed out. Someone may not be able to perceive that color difference. Also, depending on the colors you choose, some of them aren't intuitive anyway, because it's like, okay, well, one color could be red and one color could be blue, but which one is the off-on indicator? It's okay to have the color indication. However, you just want to make sure that you combine this with another way to perceive. So you could include text where you say on and off, and then you have the color in the background. With 1.4.2, we are concerned with audio, and especially specifically audio that is auto playing. So if there is automatically playing audio, and this can come by way of video, it must be able to be paused, stopped, or muted. And this is a very important success criterion. I recommend that you not have any audio automatically playing audio at all. But with 1.4.2, you do have the ability to pause, as long as it's okay as long as you provide the ability to pause, stop, or mute it. With 1.4.3, we are concerned with color contrast. So with regular text, we have the requirement of a 4.5 to 1 color contrast ratio. And then for large text, the color contrast ratio is 3 to 1. With the idea here being that if it's larger text, then we don't need as much of a contrast. But ideally, all of your text is 4.5 to 1 or over. To check for color contrast, it is very easy. There are any number of color contrast tools, but the key here is to make sure that you meet these different thresholds. And then for large text, it would be either 14 point and bold or 18 size font and over. With 1.4.4, we are concerned with the ability to resize text. And this is different than zooming in on a page, because here we are only resizing text. So the requirement is that text must be able to be resized up to 200% without negatively affecting the ability to read the content or use the functions of a website. We really don't want the text to overlap with different interactive elements. We don't want the text to jumble upon itself to where we can't read the content. So the key is you want to make sure that your text is resizable. If someone resizes your text up to 200%, there is no loss of function or ability to read the content. With 1.4.5, we are concerned with the use of text inside images. Unless the text is for a branding purpose or it is to convey a specific or a certain meaning when we are using the images of the text. But generally, you want to stay away from images of text. And so that's all 1.4.5 is getting at, especially when you have a lot of information. Like, let's just say we have a screenshot I think of Twitter. There are so many times where someone will screenshot their text messages and then put that as a tweet. Well, that is a complete image of text, and then if someone cannot visually see that image, then they would need to provide. You'd need to provide an alternative, but it's best just to avoid use of images of text altogether. With 2.1.1, we are concerned with the ability to access the functionality on a website using only a keyboard. And this is essential. You must have this in place. So to test this, just use only your keyboard and make sure that you can use all of the functionality on your website. 2.1.2 is related, but it is different. Here we are concerned with a keyboard trap. We want to make sure users are never stuck or trapped at any point on your website. So users can navigate forwards and backwards. And really with 2.1.1 and 2.1.2, the whole point here is that someone can completely use your website, your web application, whatever your asset is. They can completely use your website with a keyboard only. So at no point should they ever get trapped. At no point should they be stuck. At no point should they ever not be able to interact with the website. Someone can use your website with a keyboard just as someone else could use your website with a mouse. With 2.2.1, we are concerned with time limits. The title here is adjustable time. If there is a time limit that exists on your website, make sure users can turn off this time limit, adjust it, or extend the time limit. This comes back to a very familiar theme that is consistent throughout the web content accessibility guidelines. Put the user in control. The user is in control of the content and the functionality, but the website owner decides what content and what functionality will be available. After that, you want to put the user in control. And some trends in the last, marketing trends especially, are to take control away from the user or to try to hide things away from the user, and accessibility goes back. And it actually is going to, when more websites are accessible, it's going to dramatically improve the user experience, because accessibility leads right to user experience. But that is getting away from this success criterion. The point is that we want to put users in control. With 2.2.2, we want to make sure that there is any content that is moving, scrolling, blinking, updating, etc., that users have the ability to pause, stop, or hide it. Again, the best practice is to not have this in place, but if you do, just make sure that users have the ability to control it. And again, we are putting the users in control of the content. Okay, I hit the next, but I was actually not in the presentation, but we're back to the presentation. The next success criterion is 2.3.1. We are concerned with flashing content. So if there's any flashing content that flashes more than 3 times in a second, then we make sure that your web page, no websites have this whatsoever. So just be on the lookout for any content that's flashing. It could cause a problem if someone is susceptible to seizures. We want to avoid this altogether. I recommend taking out flashing content altogether, but here the requirement is that if something is flashing more than 3 times in a second, it is disallowed. With 2.4.1, we are concerned, the title here is bypass blocks. This success criterion is typically thought of the skip to content success criterion, or the skip link success criterion. And that is one way to satisfy this success criterion, is to have a skip to content link. So when it comes to bypass blocks, we are concerned with repeated blocks of content. And almost always this is going to be the header of a website that we are concerned about, because users will have to encounter this header over and over again. And there is repeated content. So it could be repeated content in the form of menus. So the navigation menus, the search bar, advertisements, contact information, and so on. All of that information that is repeated, we want users to have a way to bypass this easily. And so the means that we typically think this is coming about is with a skip link, but this success criterion can technically be satisfied with a with headings, with a proper heading structure, or by having landmarks on your website. So keep that in mind, but a skip link is always a good practice. With 2.4.2, this is perhaps the easiest success criterion in the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. We are concerned with page titles, so just making sure that each page of our website has a unique and descriptive page title. With 2.4.3, we are concerned with focus order. And when it comes to focus, think about interactive elements, because that's where focus goes. And so with focus order, we want to make sure that users are able to navigate through interactive elements in a logical and intuitive sequence. So this brings us back to the meaningful sequence success criteria that we are talking about order, and making sure that the order, the meaning of the order was preserved. And in this success criterion, we also want to make sure that our focus is logical and intuitive. And so that when someone is tabbing through a website, that they are going through the different interactive elements in a way that is logical and intuitive. So that is the requirement here. With 2.4.4, we are concerned with the link purpose. So think of this as the click here success criterion. We want to make sure that the purpose of each link can be determined from the link text alone. So if we have a click here link and we have this link text in isolation, we don't know what the purpose of this link is. The same could be said for go here or visit now, etc. We want to be more descriptive than that so that someone knows the purpose of the link. But note this second part of the success criterion. It says, or from the programmatically determinable link context. So context can help us satisfy this success criterion as well. So if we have the click here link at the end of a sentence, then it can be, we can know the purpose of the link from the link context. But the best practice here is to make sure that you don't have ambiguous or general anchor text, that your link purpose is clear from the link alone. With 2.4.5, the title is multiple ways. And so this is, again, a more general success criterion, but we just want to check and make sure that there are multiple ways to find pages on our website. So this can be satisfied by any combination of having a search field, a sitemap, a breadcrumbs on our pages, so that someone can easily know at what page they are within a sequence of pages, and they can go back. Also related pages, so having related pages below a page, so that again, the key here is we want to make sure that navigation is simple, it is easy, and if someone wants to find content, they are easily able to do so. With 2.4.6, we are concerned with headings and labels, and making sure that the headings and labels themselves are clear and descriptive. They don't need to be long, but again, we want to set expectations. We want someone to know what these headings and labels are for, what they are setting up. So just make sure your headings and labels are clear and descriptive. With 2.4.7, we are concerned with a focus indicator. So I talked about focus order earlier. Here we are concerned with a focus indicator. So any quote unquote user interface control that receives focus from a keyboard user should have a focus indicator that indicates focus visually. All right, so what this is getting at is making sure that when we are tabbing through a website, so let's say we're a keyboard user and we're going through a website, we want to know where our focus rests. So if we have stopped on an interactive element, let's say it's a button, then we can visually see where focus is, hence the title focus indicator. And that's all this is getting at. And so with any interface control, user interface control, just think of interactive elements. So this could be a link, or this could be a button, this could be a slider, this could be a checkbox, and so on. Here, we just want to make sure that wherever focus rests, then someone knows where that focus is. With 3.1.1, we are concerned with page language. This is another very easy success criterion. And this is just making sure that we have a language set in the code for every page. So the language is programmatically determinable. 3.1.2 is also about language, but here we are concerned with changes in the language. So if there is a language change within a page, then we want to indicate that language change programmatically, which means that we code it in. With 3.2.1, we are concerned with no changes on focus. So the requirement is that there is no context changes and nothing is activated merely because an item receives focus. So let's say that we are tabbing through a website. We want to make sure that just because we put our focus on an element, nothing is activated. And again, this gets back to putting the user in control. So just because focus goes to, let's say, a button, but I don't activate that button, I don't trigger that button, and yet focus changes because we have gone to that button, or we have context change. So a pop-up comes up because we've put our focus in on that button. We want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So again, the user remains in control and that we're not deciding for someone that just because they've gone to a specific interactive element, let's say it's a button, that a change of context doesn't come or an activation doesn't result because the user has, in this scenario, has not caused anything to be activated. With 3.2.2, we have something similar. So no input change. So no changes occur simply because someone inputs information or interacts with a control. So for example, a pop-up coming up after someone adds their name to a form field, or let's say that someone completes a form and that something changes even though they haven't actually submitted the form. So again, putting the user in control. For most websites, this isn't a problem, but we do want to check for this because if it happens, then it can really lead to bad consequences. So we want to make sure that if someone makes an input, then there is no change of context. Nothing happens as a result of that input. With 3.2.3, we are back to a more general success criterion. Here we have the requirement of consistent navigation. This simply means that we keep navigation consistent. Think of our menus and our navigation links in our header and our footer. These should remain relatively the same. They don't have to be the exact same, but they should be in the same relative order. The layout should be consistent. The key here is we don't want to change things up on anyone all of a sudden. We want predictability. We want consistency. So the consistency in navigation is really, really important because we want navigation to be as simple and as easy as possible. And that's all 3.2.3 is getting at. With 3.2.4, we are back to consistency, but this time with identification. So we want to make sure that if we have interactive elements that have the same function, they are identified consistently. Now, I say consistently. This doesn't always have to be the exact same. And a great example is if we have a page, let's say we have a digital book and we have a button for turning the page, or it's a link for turning the page, then the page might change. So the label might be turn to page 2 on one page and then turn to page 3 on another. So it's not the exact same identification, but it is consistent. And that's the key is that we are consistent. For many instances, this is going to be the exact same. Think about a Facebook button. So some Facebook buttons might be share to Facebook, might be like on Facebook, or follow us on Facebook. If the function is the same, then the identification needs to be the same. So if the function is to share to Facebook, then it should always have the same identification. If it is to follow us on Facebook, then keep it the same. Follow us on Facebook. It just depends what the function is, and when we have that function, then we make sure that the identification is consistent. With 3.3.1, we are concerned with error identification, and this is requiring that we make any form errors easy to identify, understand, and correct. So if an error results, we want someone to know that that error has come about, and that person is able to understand what the error is. They are able to identify where the error has occurred, and they are able to easily correct the error. With 3.3.2, the title here is labels and instructions. We want to make sure that we have clear visual and programmatic labels and instructions for user input fields. And this is so that users are able to understand what is required and how or what to input into the different fields. So this is rather intuitive. Just make sure that both the visual and programmatic labels and or instructions are clear and understandable, and they help someone know what is required and what to input. And just thinking generally here, we're going back to a familiar theme. We want to make the use of our website intuitive, simple, and easy to use. So again, I talked about user experience. This is going to help with better user experience. With 3.3.3, the title is error suggestions. And so if an input error is automatically detected, we provide suggestions for correcting that error. So again, just to help users out with filling out forms, making sure that if we do provide an error, it's not just that we alert of an error, but that we also provide suggestions. So this could be a sample format. So this is, for example, if you're looking for a certain date format, then we provide that format for the users to give them a model to work from. Really, we want to make this as easy as possible. So if someone makes an error and you are looking for, let's say it's a certain format with your form field, then someone is easily able to know this is what the form field is calling for. Now I know this. Now I know why there was an error. And so with these error suggestions, we really facilitate the use of inputting information. With 3.3.4, we are back to errors. The title here is error prevention. If a user is submitting important information, then we provide a way to reverse, correct, or review that transaction or submission. So when it comes to important information, this could be signing away legal rights. It could be something where we have financial implications. Let's just say we are purchasing stock. We want to make sure that let's just say we have the example of purchasing stock. If someone is purchasing stock, we want to make really sure that they don't purchase 1,000 shares of a stock when they really only intend to purchase 100. So because of that, we need to provide a way to either reverse the submission, correct it, or review the transaction or submission. Usually what is the case is we can do a combination of these, but we especially have the opportunity to review. That's always good. We want to make sure that there are no dire consequences just because a simple error has taken place. So another example here could be booking a flight. If you choose the wrong date, again, really bad consequences. And we want to make sure that that kind of thing doesn't happen. Or if we are signing away our rights to sue, then we also want to make sure that we don't inadvertently do so because a button pops up and we want to dismiss that button right away. And then we do so, and then all of a sudden we've signed away our rights to sue. That should not be the case. So with 3.3.4, we are concerned with error prevention. With 4.1.1, we are concerned with parsing. So basically just making sure our code is free of errors. This is another more general success criterion. And it is now obsolete under WCAG 2.2. I believe it is preserved under 2.1, but under 2.2, they removed this success criterion. So if you are working towards 2.2 conformance, then you could ignore parsing. I think it's a good general success criterion. It's just making sure that we are using good, clean code, that we don't have any brackets that aren't closed, etc. All right, so with 4.1.2, we are concerned with name, role, and value. And this is getting to interactive elements. We just want to make sure that the keyword here is applicable, name, role, state, and or value is able to be programmatically determined. So think of menus, think of checkboxes, etc. And when I say applicable, it's not always the name, role, state, and or value is not always applicable. So for example, the value may not be applicable. Let's think about a menu, right? If we have the menu and the state is collapsed or uncollapsed, that's very important information. We need to make sure that that's available programmatically. Um, let's just say that the state could be a checkbox. It could be a checked or unchecked. We need to make sure that's available programmatically. Let's say we have a slider and we adjust the value. We need to make sure that that value is available programmatically. So when we look at menus, when we look at checkboxes, when we look at buttons, we look at radio buttons, we look at sliders, etc. If there's a whatever name, role, state, and or value that is applicable to that interactive element, we need to make sure that that information is available programmatically. And that actually concludes WCAG 2.0 AA success criteria. So we just went through 38 success criteria. There are just 12 more to go through, starting with 1.3.4 orientation. So here the requirement is that we make sure our website, our web content does not lock on portrait or landscape mode. So just think when you're on a mobile device, we want to make sure that someone is able to successfully view the content either on portrait or landscape. So your website should not lock. And just to back up one slide, we are now moving to WCAG 2.1 AA success criteria, and these are the last 12 success criteria that we will go through. I just covered 1.3.4 orientation. Now we will go to 1.3.5 input. So here we want to make sure that the purpose of input fields is programmatically available. And this is so that the autocomplete option is available in browsers, and it's also so assistive technologies can help guide and facilitate input. So here, just know that we go beyond just having what the input field is, and we have the purpose behind it. So it gets into more specifics, and this is something where we're just going to have to code this in. But the one nice feature here is that it enables autocomplete, and then another nice feature is that it enables assistive technologies to further guide users and help facilitate the input. And this is really for form fields. With 1.4.10, we are concerned with reflow. So the requirement is that your website is able to be zoomed in without requiring horizontal scrolling or just causing a poor experience in general. We want to avoid forcing users to scroll back and forth to use content when the website is zoomed in. So a hack here is to go to a web browser and then increase the size, zoom to 400%, and then see if your website is still functions correctly. Everything is still readable. You don't have to horizontally scroll. If that is the case, you are likely going to meet this success criterion. But the key here is we want to be able to zoom in without causing a poor experience. With 1.4.11, we are back to contrast, but this time it is non-text contrast. So any meaningful non-text content should have a minimum 3:1 color contrast ratio. And this only makes sense because it's not just text that's important. It is also the non-text content that can be important. So just think about buttons. We want to make sure that buttons stand out and have a sufficient color contrast. So if we have meaningful non-text content, anything that's not text, we want to make sure that that meaning is visible, and we will make sure that we have a minimum color contrast ratio. With 1.4.12, we have text spacing, and the key here is just that we can adjust the text spacing without causing a poor experience. So very similar to the text resize, and then also getting really at the same concept behind the ability to zoom in. Here we are concerned with the actual spacing of the text. With 1.4.13, we are concerned with content that appears on hover or focus. So any additional content, and this can occur with pop-ups or tooltips or submenus. Any additional content that appears can be easily dismissed or remain visible if the user desires. We are back to a familiar theme, putting the users in control. So just be mindful of any content that appears on hover or focus. With 2.1.4, we are concerned with keyboard shortcuts. If there is a keyboard shortcut present, the user is able to turn it off or key in another shortcut and or limit the shortcut's active state. With 2.5.1, we are concerned with pointer gestures. So the key here is to provide a simple alternative to something that is a potentially complex finger motion, and we're concerned with touchscreens for this success criterion. So just think about when you're on a mobile device and you are swiping or you are pinching. We want a simple alternative to that gesture. And so this could be a single tap. But here, just think about if your website or your web application is requiring pinching or swiping, that we also have a single tap alternative or another simple alternative. With 2.5.2, we are concerned with the ability to undo a simple press down. So the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines uses the term down event. And the title of this success criterion is Pointer Cancellation. And the requirement is that we avoid down event execution. So we provide a way to cancel a trigger action. So if you press with your finger or you press down on a mouse, and you want the ability to cancel that. So we don't want there to be an execution merely because we have a quote unquote down event where we've pressed down. We want to make sure that execution is only on the up event. So we want to make sure that we provide a way to cancel when we activate a function using a mouse or a finger. So that was very long-winded, but the key here is be aware of quote unquote down events. Nothing should happen. We should be able to trigger if we have a down event. So we're able to move our finger away, or we're able to drag the mouse away and not cause an action to be triggered. With 2.5.3, we want to make sure that our programmatic labels are aligned up with the corresponding visual text. The title here is label and name. So making sure that it doesn't have to be exactly the same, but our programmatic labels should generally be the same as the visual text. I think of it as alignment. So let's just say we have a button that is visually labeled sign up now, and then we have the programmatic label of sign up. That would meet this success criterion. What we don't want to do is we don't want to have different labels. So let's say the visual text is order now, and then the programmatic text is buy on demand or something to that effect. So here we have different labels not matching up, which can create confusion. So we want to make sure they're at least aligned. And this really means we want to make sure that they start with the same words. There may be something different at the end, but generally you'd like them to be the exact same. All right, with 2.5.4, we are concerned with motion. So the title is Motion Actuation, and the requirement is for any functions that are activated by motion, provide a simpler alternative means of action. Also give users the option to turn off motion activation. So think about if we shake a phone to create an action, or we point the camera to us and we wave to it for an activation. We want to provide a simpler alternative means of that action. And this is just getting into flexibility. Another familiar theme with the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines is to be flexible. So they talk about alternatives. And this is another instance where it's okay to have motion actuation, but instead of just having it so that we shake a phone to, let's say, erase a text that we wrote, that we provide a simpler alternative means of erasing that text in this instance. So whatever the case is, let's not for this success criterion, don't just have something where we activate through motion. So through shaking our phone, let's say, or moving it back and forth, or and I know that's similar to shaking, but just all of these different motions. And then also with the camera sensor, if we are nodding our head for a specific motion, or we're shaking our head, or we're giving a thumbs up, we have a simpler alternative means of accomplishing that same action. With 4.1.3, we are concerned with status messages. So if a status message appears, make sure that it is coded with the role or the property so that screen reader users are alerted without losing focus. So we want the experience to be similar in that screen reader users are notified of a status message, but it doesn't disrupt their flow. So let's think about if we are adding an item to cart, and we go ahead and we add that item to cart, and then we get a notification that says item added to cart. Then here for screen reader users, we want to make sure that we code in with roller properties. And here we're typically going to use, we're really going to use accessible rich internet applications, also known as ARIA, to code in the fact that we are going to provide an alert to the screen reader user. And it will be programmatically there that item added to cart. But the screen reader user will not be disrupted in what they're doing, so they will not lose focus with where they are currently. So that's the key here. It's just making sure that status messages are available programmatically. And that actually finishes this presentation. So we have gone through all of the WCAG 2.1 conformance level AA success criteria. So you have a really good feel for what the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines require, but I didn't go through all of the layers to these success criteria. I didn't get into all of the details. I skipped over everything to give you a brief summary because, as you can tell, it can take a while to get through all of the success criteria. And of course, there are exceptions to these different success criteria, and I didn't get into those either because we wanted to extract the main points. So now that you've gone through my WCAG 2.1 AA video checklist, you have a really good basic feel for the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. But if you would like to learn more, take this to the next level, my WCAG course goes into full details, and I really draw everything out. There are so many resources inside the course. So I not only have video explanations of me going through each success criterion, but there are also text explanations, and they aren't the exact same. So really you give yourself multiple ways to learn about the different success criteria. I also have all sorts of resources inside the course, including the workflows, including the Excel spreadsheet checklist. Really, it just gets into depth. So the course is available at wcagcourse.com if you'd like to sign up. I also offer training. I have the ADA compliance course at adacompliance.net. And by the way, WCAG course will take you to adacompliance.net. But with this training, this is going to, if you're concerned with lawsuits, this is going to help you reduce your risk of litigation by prioritizing the issues that are most commonly claimed in lawsuits. So we're going to go through, and it's really the strategic component of the prioritizing the different accessibility issues, which are usually tethered to WCAG success criteria. And then at accessible.org, if you need services for accessibility, I offer services. There are also free resources on accessible.org, including my guides and checklists. So you can find my WCAG guides and checklist available on accessible.org. There is also an accessibility statement template I will include links to all of these resources, but for now, we have just taken 50 minutes to go through the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines for version 2.1 Conformance Level AA. So now you have a much better understanding of these different success criteria that comprise the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines.